Greetings, greenhouse people, and welcome to another installment of Tech on Demand, where our goal is always to bring you tips, tricks, and information to produce and differentiate your best crop ever. I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and I'm happy to be joined once again by Bryce Anderson, the sales manager for the HC companies. You may know him from such things as our previous podcast on pricing. Bryce is a 28-year industry vet with experience in a wide range of roles, from greenhouse production and distribution to retail and even manufacturing. He's been a head grower, he's been a production manager, he's even managed a garden center, and he brings experience in sales and operation management to the table. He says his skills have evolved over the years to include water, media, nutrition management, and he has a particular focus on crop quality. And it's that range of skills and experience that should make this discussion particularly interesting. Product differentiation is critical to your value proposition. Our last podcast was awesome, in my opinion, because it was a conversation, and I expect the same this time. So, Bryce, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for having me back. I guess we kicked the training wheels off. We'll give it another go here today.
For sure. Last time was fun, and I know we're going to have fun again today. So let's just dive right into this pool, shock the system with some cold water. How the heck can a grower differentiate a red geranium? I mean, obviously I'm being facetious, but the challenge kind of stands. Differentiation's tough. So why don't you get us started with some quick thoughts on why this topic is so critical?
It's interesting. I've always thought quality was the one way to differentiate your products from others, but the quality scope is so narrow these days. Everybody's growing quality product. It's more scientific. For geranium, I think it's kind of two-part. Is it blooming? Because if they're blooming, you can have terrible vegetative quality and it'll still sell like hotcakes. And you could have beautiful vegetative quality geranium and no blooms, and they'll sit there. The other thing is too, is it your thing? What are you known for? Are geraniums what you're known for? I mean, I remember George loved, Malmberg's, but it's geraniums by George. It's that's their thing, is geraniums. They do a whole bunch of other stuff, but I always knew George as the geranium guy. Could be something that people pick up when they're there. If geraniums are your calling or what getting people in the door, then that's your differentiation on that plant specifically. But blooms sell.
It's true. It's very true. And you're right. Quality is king, but I think the range of quality has gotten pretty narrow, and just about everything that you see coming to market is high quality now, thanks to all sorts of different reasons. And that does bring us to the whole point of differentiation and other ways to differentiate your products. So with an entire market full of choices, from, I guess, one perspective, there's a lot of choice. And then there is, copycatting and mimicking products from another point of view. The differentiation that you mentioned can be a little bit tough, I think, for people to wrap their head around. So how does this move us down what could be considered a dangerous path to commoditization, if that's even a word, our products becoming commodities?
I think the cool, really flowers in a way are in my opinion, somewhat commodity items with all the retailers out there. I mean, go to any number of places and find flowers and vegetables. But when we start diving into selection, I think selection is really important. Selection and kind of like, what is your one thing that you're known for? I think about, vegetables are really hot, especially, I feel like they really peaked and then they kind of tapered off a little bit. And now last year they went gangbusters, and, people don't want a tomato. They want to choose from 100 varieties of tomatoes. And you get people into your stores, or you get people to buy product from you for the selection that you have in one category. You kind of carry the day, you fill the truck with the other stuff that you have. So rather than try to be all things to all people, my thing would be to, pick something that I really want to, focus in and hone in on, to kind of draw everybody in and kind of make it my calling, to go back to that, make it my thing that I'm known for, and focus on that one thing and make sure I do it perfectly and do it consistently and never run out.
Very, very good points. I think that hanging your hat on a specific product or product type makes a lot of sense, and it needs to be something that you're passionate about. That's probably not something you can fake. And then, my thought on tomatoes when you were talking about that range and how folks shopping now want, they want to know everything, the ins and outs of those tomatoes. That's really about telling that story at retail or at the package that you're putting on in your wholesale production, and really calling them out by name and not just putting them out and hoping that people can figure it out on their own. So when you start thinking about the time that it takes to put into variety selection and into the packaging around that product, whether that's the story or the actual physical packaging, it seems like that could be costly, whether that's dollars or time, to go out and hunt down the different types of products that you want to sell. So what do you think about the cost to differentiate, or maybe like the flip side, the cost not to differentiate?
I think it's all about looking at everything together, packaging, genetics, varieties. I remember 25 years ago, there was literally like, two different options of Bacopa, one different option or two different options of Scavola. And now you've got 5 from every single breeder. And it's like, that can be overwhelming. And I've seen the books from some of the young plant producers that, their offering is very extensive, but then, they pull the books off the shelf that show, this is what we have available. And it's like 10-fold or 100-fold. So they're just picking a very narrow offering of what's really available out there. Trying to be all things to all people can be probably the most costly part of it. If you think that the market wants a simply beautiful, Calibracoa, and they want a Proven Winners Bacopa, or they want a Selectra Angelonia, they all have great varieties, from those different breeders. But, streamline your supply chain from an input standpoint down to, 2 or 3, one primary and 2 or 3, secondary and a tertiary supplier, and really work with what they have and kind of dial in on a program that those vendors offer, whether it be with soils or containers or plant material, fertilizer programs or whatnot. And I really think that, to optimize profits from a differentiation standpoint, the KISS method really applies. Keep it simple. Mm-hmm. Because it can be costly to try to source things from too many different places in terms of freight. And freight's a real number these days. It's gotten to become such a large number, on the expenses.
Yep. Freight and labor. And I think that there is you can go too far in that narrow and deep mentality. So it's got to be tough to strike the right balance between narrowing down your product assortment and maybe going too far, and then having that insanely broad assortment that we see at a lot of greenhouses that are hard to manage, it's hard to grow, and probably just confuses their customers on the wholesale side.
Yeah, I think differentiation too, it goes beyond just the simple genetics and the selections around plant material we put in the greenhouse. I mean, there's a lot of growers and retailers that have like a color theme. Okay, so I've got some growers that I work with that they do everything in white, and all of their containers are white, all their signage is white, their advertising is white, and they're known. That's who they are because they use white for everything. Simply Beautiful is known for their pastel shaded pot and the artwork. It's like, okay, I can see that across the greenhouse, and I know it's Simply Beautiful, much in the same way that when I walk through a garden center and I see the white pot with the Proven Winners, regardless of where it is. So there's some of that brand recognition marketing in place. And really the original in my mind is Miracle-Gro. Yeah. Miracle-Gro has been around for decades, and it's like the Kleenex of water soluble fertilizers. It's like, are you going to go pick up some Miracle-Gro today? And you might buy Jack's Classic, but it's still Miracle-Gro in people's minds. But yeah, so what if there's 5 garden centers? I remember in the 70s, 80s, and maybe into the early to mid 90s, you had primary garden centers. Some of the mass merchants really hadn't gotten into the, big into the flower trade yet. Now we see situations where we've got small to mid-sized towns where they might have 5 different retailers on a small, in town that's got a portable greenhouse selling flowers and maybe a couple garden centers and maybe a flower shop. And it's like, well, how do I set myself aside? Mm-hmm. I think selection's a big thing. And I think service, our industry is pretty cool. It's all about relationships, in all aspects of this industry that I've worked in. It's relationship based, it's trust, and it's putting good people in place and taking care of the customers. So if I've got competitors in town, if you will, that they've got the satellite, take it down at the end of the season type retail environment, I'm going to try to kill them with service, get the customers in for the service to help them with the technical aspects of being successful at gardening.
Yeah, the service element can't be understated. I mean, it's a hard one to it's a hard one to quantify, but it's certainly something that every shopper sees pretty clearly and identifies with or doesn't. And then I think that also extends to wholesale growers offering that personalized service to the retail customers and having that relationship. I think gone are the days of sending the weekly fax list. Now you're actually having a discussion ahead of the season to plan that product. And part of that is economic, right? You want to, you don't want to grow too much extra. You want to have some of those orders either pre-booked or pre-sold, but it comes down to those relationships, which brings me to my next question, which I really don't have any sort of an answer to, which is, where does the most important elements of differentiation lie? Is it on the wholesale grower side? Again, I don't think you're sending plastic flats to market that often. Or does it come to on the retail side, all about that retail presentation, or do they work together? Could even go back to the breeder level in terms of differentiating the genetics. So what do you think about that? Where does the onus fall when it comes to differentiation?
We've talked a good bit about the retail environment, and for this one, I really think that the opportunity for differentiation lies really with the wholesale growers, because when we start looking at things, as simple, let's assume that the quality is going to be great, because the range of quality is so narrow these days. There's a lot of great growers out there. But when we think about a 10-inch hanging basket, all of the different 10-inch hanging basket manufacturers. I know at HC companies, we have at least a dozen different 10-inch hanging baskets that range in price. Some of those baskets will be 9 7/8 inches and 1.25 gallons, all the way up to 11 inches and 1.74 gallons and beyond. And as a wholesale grower that is servicing a retailer who is likely buying from multiple wholesale growers, and they're looking at a 10-inch hanging basket price on 5 different price lists, and you've got a range of, let's say, $10 to $16 wholesale cost. What does that mean? Or maybe one of the growers is using one of the smaller hanging baskets and is able to afford or justify the pricing model that they've put together based on the input costs, because it's all about input costs. And the grower and they're doing a monoculture seed or whatever it is, or a monoculture basket. One of the other growers may be offering a multiculture basket, and it's an 11-inch basket, 1.75 gallon. So call it an 11-inch basket. You're buying an 11-inch basket. Or if you've got other wholesale growers that you are, quote unquote, or in a way competing with in your market, take a look at what they're using and maybe try to see what kind of minor tweaks you can make to your offering to set yourself, aside from that. I think if you can sell quicker, sell faster, sell more in a dynamic market in the spring, it's like the spring chaos. The pennies up front can really pay off, even though it still adds to the bottom line of your costs.
And that kind of differentiation, I think, leads to loyalty from retailers too. If they see that you as a wholesaler are putting a little bit of extra cost in on your end, provide them with a product that they can use to differentiate from, like you said, in just about every town, there's multiple outlets selling plants. It's not rarely do you go into a city where there's one greenhouse. That you're gonna build that loyalty and appreciation, and then then they will probably take that next step to present that product well, market that product well, and then at the end, it all benefits the end user, because a nicer product or an upgraded product is going to look better in their yard or on their porch. So
absolutely,
I think that yeah, I mean, it falls to all levels of the chain, but our products start in a greenhouse, so that's really where a lot of those steps need to be taken. And we talked a little bit before we started recording about how the industry's changed over the years, and how more growers have taken the initiative to go out and source differentiated packaging. They've learned from other retailers outside of the industry the importance of packaging, and we're seeing it. We've seen it for a decade probably or more, but I think we're starting to see the proof in the pudding that an upgraded packaging and helping the retailers tell that story is driving sales. So
our last podcast, we talked a little bit about pricing, and and kind of one of the things that I mentioned was, if I'm buying building materials, I'm not going to go to one place to get my 2x4s and go to another place for my 2x6s. I'm going to get them all at one place. And in terms of flower growing, and both wholesalers and retailers, if you've got that thing, the selection of vegetables, or maybe you've got the largest selection of geraniums. I happen to love geraniums. I do them every year. I've got huge tubs of geraniums. They're one of my favorites. Or maybe you're doing the accent plants because your market is more rural, that still does the cemetery boxes, and you've got a huge selection of geraniums and accent plants. If you differentiate yourself with a selection in a category or two, your customers, my customers, they didn't have time to order from 5 different places to get 5 different things. And if they came to me for the things that I had that nobody else had, they were going to get the rest of the stuff from me too. So, even just minor tweaks in availability and selection and allocation of greenhouse space towards kind of a niche, if you will, can really go a long ways towards, carrying the orders for everything else.
Yeah. And I remember a story I heard from a retailer in Texas, and we were talking, what's the coolest new product you had this year? And he said it was a 3-color Angelonia pot. It's like an 8-inch pot, 3 different colors of Angelonia. Angelonia was a big crop for them south, and he said, yeah, it was just the grower got creative, popped 3 different color liners into that pot, and produced something that my customers had never seen before. Charge more for it on the retail end, and really it was exciting. And and we chuckled and said, oh, that's just being a little bit creative in how you're potting it up, but it really went a long way. So I think that there are a lot of different, probably inexpensive ways to differentiate that will pay off and create consumer excitement. So
back to packaging, you mentioned packaging. I think that as we have some generational shifts that we're going through now that are pretty dramatic, I think that the what I call maybe the thought process for me coming up in this industry was grow a quality crop and it'll sell. And kind of the joke, as having sold containers for many years now, it's like we talk a lot about container sizes, colors, printing, no printing, private labeling, branding, whatever. And it's like, well, if you grow a quality product, it's going to sell in spite of the container. But the younger shopper today, I'm seeing more instances. I love to tour garden centers in the springtime and just observe consumer behavior and see what's going on. And it's really interesting to me to see how the younger shoppers will actually, really base their purchasing decision around what kind of container it's in or what color the container it's in. And so it's more than just quality. You're right. Packaging is such an important piece to it too. But if the quality is there, it's less important.
Yeah, but like we've talked about, the quality is, kind of table stakes these days. And,
Yeah.
even, and I know we're going to get into it a little bit in our next podcast, but, I think today's shopper, there is a certain segment of today's shopper that's looking for the more sustainable packaging. That can be challenging on the, in the past, it was challenging on the grower side, much less so these days. But, that's another area that I think, can be differentiated, and we see it in just about every other consumer product, whether it's touting the health benefits of breakfast cereals or the vitamin content in the water and things like that. So there is a new generation of shopper. It's a massive generation, which is exciting, and certainly as we move forward, the packaging and the type of packaging and the way the products are sold in the stores is going to be even more critical, and not forgetting that this huge incoming generation of shoppers probably does not have the plant knowledge that their mom and grandma did. So telling that story at retail and driving success and is going to be extremely important, and could be your differentiator, the thing that you hang your hat on.
And to tie back to our previous discussion too, that's an opportunity to harvest the value in the product too. And I think we've talked about, or we have talked about price changes, and it's so much easier to make a price change when you're making a product change, because now you're not just viewed as raising the price on something.
That's true. Differentiation does allow for that in a big way. So I think this has been a good discussion, somewhat complex, but I think it's one that growers need to think about. And maybe you think about it through this season and start making some changes next year. One of my favorite quotes is, life starts at the edge of your comfort zone, and we cannot shy away from having these kind of conversations and developing these new strategies. We don't want to be too late. And I don't think we're too late at the moment. So what do you think, Bryce? Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up? And then just definitely remind the listeners how they can get in touch with you or where they can learn more about HC.
We are a very family-oriented industry. We've got generations of greenhouse owners, operators, retailers. And, I just think it's so cool when I see growers and retailers tying back to their family history and the things that they do. It's part of their story. It's part of their success. It's part of their, the lifeblood of their family. And, maybe there's something that, that your grandfather or great grandfather started out doing, I don't know, chrysanthemums or stalks or, whatever's a cut flower or vegetables, and try to tie that in as a differentiation, tie it into the family values and make some subtle changes. The beautiful thing about change, in my opinion, is we don't have to change everything all at once. We can make minor tweaks and adjustments. And kind of like prices in a Sunday ad, they go up and down every week. And if that change doesn't work out, then you've had very little, you're out very little. So instead of looking at it as this overwhelmingly, oh my gosh, I have to change everything, just take on the adventure of trying one or two new things and implementing them into your product mix or your business plan, and seeing how they pay off, and let it evolve from there, because we're in it to win it long term. It's not a just this year thing. So our businesses are going to continue to evolve, and we just got to have fun doing it, because I think we all do what we do because we love this industry.
For sure. And I can't go without saying how much I love it when I walk into a garden center or greenhouse and see the old history, the old photos, the old implements that they used in the past, old trucks sitting around. Mm-hmm. And I know that I don't think it's just me. I think that there are a lot of shoppers out there who really want to see the history and the family orientation of the business. And just about every listener's got to have old family photos from the greenhouse sitting around that you could frame up and use to tell that story. And that will differentiate you from anyone else because nobody else has that story.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. I don't want to go off on a tangent on that. And speaking of which,
we could on another podcast, so stay tuned.
For sure. Oh, I could do that all day. And it does, it kills me to end this episode. But there is more. Bryce and I are going to be back soon to wrap up this little mini series with a topic that fits in with differentiation and pricing on so many levels, which is sustainable growing solutions. Think of it as the discussion on pricing was sort of an overview, differentiation dug down a little bit deeper, and then sustainable growing solutions as a differentiator. It's important now and much more important in the very near future. It's going to be a really good one, I'm sure, and it's going to have some really good action steps coming out of it. So, Bryce, on behalf of myself, Ball Publishing, and all the listeners, thank you so much. I think having conversations like this seems natural when you think of the camaraderie in our industry, which you referenced earlier. I do truly appreciate your time and your insight, and thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. And like you, I could do this all day long. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this episode.
Definitely. So I'm Bill Calkins with Tech on Demand, wishing you a fantastic season and encouragement to think about differentiation to engage your team in that discussion, because everybody's going to have good ideas that can definitely factor in. So be sure to subscribe to the Tech on Demand podcast on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and just about all the others. Take care out there.